So let's check this one out. Never ignore these 10 relationship red flags. So last time we watched the green flags.
That millions of people are staying in relationships that have no chance at actually succeeding. And they will continue to feel stuck because not enough people are reminding them what's required for relationships to be successful in the first place. So if relationships always seem overly complicated, it could be part of that frustration is we don't really know what red flags to look out for and avoid in the beginning, right? I want you to start to think about relationships like a formula or a recipe.
I want to say something before we keep watching. This has some merit. This is not purely subjective. Rules almost that you can follow. Still, sometimes it's more complicated. So whatever red flag he's gonna mention, I'm sure it's, think about it again if it's really a red flag. Just saying. Maybe don't just start dividing immediately. Maybe a second look. And you can see what's really beneath it.
Recipe. If you wanted to bake a cake together, but they started adding ingredients that the recipe didn't call for, or you started subtracting things that it did, well, you might end up with a cake that resembles a cake on the outside, right? But it wouldn't be enjoyable to eat. This one, however, is very enjoyable to eat. Imagine if I did the rest of the video just eating cake. And here's the problem. We all understand that analogy when it comes to something stupid like cake. How dare you? But for some reason, we don't understand it when it comes to one of the most important things in our life, which is our relationships. I mean, what's the purpose of a relationship in your opinion in the first place? Is it connection with someone else, to feel safe with someone, being able to rely on and do life with someone else as a team? Is it to add joy and value to your life? Is it to experience intimacy on a deeper level with someone?
Yeah,
because what we need to understand is that there are certain habits and practices that lead toward those goals of building trust and connection and safety together, and certain things that only break down and erode those things. The million-dollar question is, are you someone who is willing to look in the mirror and take accountability for which ones you're unintentionally practicing that are hurting your relationship? And are you with someone who shares that mentality? Because I can tell you all the red flags to pay attention to, but it's up to you to have the courage to step away from unhealthy situations when that's appropriate. Now, if your relationship has some of these red flags, does that mean it's doomed? Absolutely not. But it does mean we have to be careful. It does mean we have to take a step back and evaluate, because when we don't, we set ourselves up for a lot of pain in the future. If someone is actively sabotaging your recipe together and doesn't care to stop, then I don't care that you love them. I don't care about the future they promised you. I don't care about what your hopes and dreams were for that relationship. It's not a recipe for success, no matter how much you work on your half of the ingredients, right? Now, is that hard? Of course it is. I don't want you to have to break up, but I also don't want you to stay in toxic dynamics where you're the only one willing to put in the work to make it work. I don't want you staying because you hope things will change, because that's not a winning strategy. The hardest thing to do is to take emotion out of it and simply ask the question, is this relationship set up for success? Because if your immediate answer is, well, if they would just, okay, well, what if they don't? What if they don't? Can it succeed if they don't? Because right now they either can't or they won't do that work. Does that mean things are hopeless? Not at all. But it does mean you have to be honest about what you just admitted. This relationship that I have right now can't survive unless something changes. That's a very important thing to admit to yourself and to your partner if it's safe. So with all that being said, here are, in my opinion, the relationship red flags you should never ignore.
Together.
First off, don't put up with inconsistency. If someone is into you, you will know. If someone is into you, you won't have to wonder if they're into you. If you're wondering if they're into you, that's a sign something is off. Now, something could be off in us, right? Maybe we struggle with anxious attachment. That means that we have a fear that even when things are good, they could turn bad at any moment, right? So we're on high alert. We need reassurance that they still like us. But that can push people away and be a red flag in itself. We need to pause and make sure that we're starting this relationship from a healthy place and not searching for external validation from someone else to validate our own worth and value. And it's also true that if someone is hot then cold, if someone is giving off love bombing vibes and they tell you they've never experienced this love with anyone before and you're the best thing that's ever happened, and they want to plan vacations with you, right? They want to spend all this time with you. They text you all the time, but then they suddenly pull away. That would cause anyone anxiety, right? That would cause anyone to say, oh no, what happened? Did I do something wrong? I mean, like, I just want us to feel connected. I don't want to jeopardize the good thing we had. And I'm not saying that they were doing any of that manipulatively. Some people are. Other people just have commitment issues. Maybe they're emotionally unavailable. Maybe they're avoidantly attached. I don't really care. The point is you need to see consistency in the beginning. I don't mind if you're both head over heels for each other, but you have to remember there's no harm in taking things slow, right? You'll never lose the right person by taking things slow, but you could 100% avoid the pain of dating the wrong person by not taking things slow. Because when you set some healthy boundaries in the beginning of a relationship, when you maintain your life outside of the relationship and still see your friends and family and don't let this new person dictate every move of your life, when you set some non-negotiables when it comes to sleeping over or how physically intimate you want to get, a narcissistic person will immediately shame you and say you're being difficult and you don't love them like they love you. But it's our job to get to the point where we can still tell ourselves, this isn't my person, because my person wants me to be honest about what I need to feel valued and loved in this relationship. They don't punish me for it. My person doesn't shame me for setting healthy boundaries. They honor it. My person doesn't guilt trip me to do something that I'm not comfortable doing, because my person loves me. And in the past, we might have defaulted to not wanting to be seen as too needy, right? So we would have people pleased, we would have appeased, we would have abandoned our own needs and boundaries so that we wouldn't be abandoned. We desperately wanted to be chosen and loved, so we ended up bending over backwards for people who don't really bend for us, right? But we're not going to do that anymore. Some people aren't our people, even though we wanted them to be, even though they appeared to be in the beginning.
The whole agenda.
You have to have the courage and wisdom to recognize that shift in behavior and say, this is not the relationship that we started out with, and this is not the relationship I deserve. Yeah, that hurts, but I realize no one is coming to save me. I have to save me. One of the hardest things to do is to choose to go back to being single when you desperately wanted a relationship to work out. But you have to understand that you will never feel more alone than in an unhealthy relationship. Being single doesn't mean you're alone, even though sometimes
it's true, but
it
has to be really.
All right, let's do a few rapid fire, right? Because these can get kind of long and boring. Let's be honest. Number one, do they describe all their exes as crazy? Do they act like they were so mistreated in their other relationships? Nobody ever understood them. They were always the victim. Because that's not healthy. We need to be with someone who at least has a desire to understand why their last relationship didn't work out, right? What role did they play in the dynamic? And they can at least talk about some of their exes with kindness and respect. Remember, they picked every single one of those people. If they were all crazy and mean and disrespectful, how do you think they're going to talk about you if this doesn't work out? Number two, how do they treat people who can do nothing for them? Are they kind and respectful and empathetic to strangers? How do they handle conflict with their friends and family? Do they act like everyone else besides them are idiots? Do they lash out when they don't get their way? Can they see other people's perspective? Do they take accountability? Can they actually apologize? Because you might not be in conflict with them right now, but once you are, that's exactly how they're going to treat you, right? Number three, have you caught them in a pattern of lying? Because that's a really big deal. That's not something that we just need to gloss over. It's not normal. It's not something that we should make excuses for. Trust your gut. Something's off. Number four, are they your cheerleader? Because you deserve someone who can celebrate your wins with you. Relationships aren't about competition. You deserve someone who encourages you, who believes in you, who uplifts you, and doesn't have to include themselves in all of your accomplishments. Well, you wouldn't have achieved that if it wasn't for me.
That's
not normal. Number five, do they get jealous easily? Do they discourage your independence? Because if they have trust issues, that's their issue to work through. We can be empathetic with how they were hurt in the past, but jealousy and trust issues are a really big deal, and they can turn people very controlling, and you won't feel safe or loved with someone like that. Number six, are they super protective of their phone? Because I'm all about privacy, but once you're in a committed relationship and someone is just trying to look at a picture on your phone and you won't even let them hold it, you know what I mean? That means something's off. I mean, you weren't trying to comb through all their text messages, you were just trying to show them a funny video that you found or look at a picture. Either they have massive trust issues or they're hiding something. All right, number seven, while I want to be extremely kind to people who are struggling with addiction, this is something you absolutely need to pay attention to at the beginning of a relationship. You need to decide how much of whatever substance they're taking is too much and be able to walk away once it starts affecting the relationship. Because what happens so often is we want to become the helper and help them get clean. But what ends up happening is you're the only one that's massively affected by their drinking or substance abuse. All right, number eight, they don't have a life outside of you. They don't have hobbies. They don't seem to have aspirations or dreams. They don't have plans for their career. I promise you it might be fun in the beginning to date someone with no ambitions, but it gets old real quick. All right, number nine, do they act like your coach even though you didn't ask them to be? Do they give you constructive criticism
toxic or a reason to leave somebody?
Just how often you should go to the gym and how you can really be the best version of yourself if you just do this, because that's a red flag. And I know they're going to frame it as, I'm just trying to help, right? Thanks, but no thanks. Didn't ask for your help. That's actually a sign that they don't really accept you the way you are. And while I believe we should be trying to be the best versions of ourselves, toxic people use constructive feedback as a way to make you feel insecure and use it as a form of control. And number 10, this piggybacks on number 9. Sometimes they won't be encouraging you to go to the gym. They'll discourage you from going to the gym because they're going to accuse you. You're just going to the gym because you want guys to look at you. You want girls to look at you. Nope, your jealousy and insecurity, big red flag. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have some more cake to eat. Now, of course, conflict happens. Fights are going to happen. But how you fight is absolutely going to make or break your entire relationship. So if there's contempt, if there's name calling, those are non-negotiables that you can't continue in that relationship without them getting some help. Because if you stay, and people stay in toxic relationships all the time, but it eventually breaks you. You go numb, you get depressed, you get sick, you detach emotionally and eventually physically because you have to. It affects you to your core, and I just
Name
want to stop any
calling.
of that before it starts. You never deserve to be talked down to, belittled,
ridiculous.
demeaned, devalued, mocked, laughed at, looked down upon, yelled at, called names, or any of that. No one has to speak to someone else like that, right? Those are choices. And they could choose a healthy approach to communicate whatever they're trying to communicate, but they either can't or won't. And it's not your job to figure out how to teach them how to be kind and respectful. I don't care about their past. They were traumatized. They didn't have X, Y, and Z growing up. I get it. We all have our stuff. And yet we can still hold people accountable to how they speak to us. You don't speak to them like that, do you? Do you call them stupid? Do you treat them like they're worthless? Of course you don't. And you deserve that same level of respect and consideration. I bet they don't speak to their boss like that. Now, the hard part is recognizing and admitting that sometimes we put up with bad behavior because that's what was modeled for us. Our parents fought like that, or our parents belittled us. And so in our bodies, it actually feels familiar to us. But even if that's true, we have to fight that narrative because that's not love. And it doesn't lead to the relationship you deserve and want. You are valuable and you deserve respect and kindness. And I'm not going to tolerate anyone calling you too needy or too sensitive or too emotional, and you shouldn't either. Most of the time, you're not too needy for the right person. To the right person, they look at what you were needing in that past relationship, and instead of calling you too needy, they say, that's it. You just wanted the bare minimum of mutual respect in our communication. You just wanted reciprocation regarding the effort we both put into this relationship. I'm happy to give you that. The right type of person doesn't make kindness conditional, right? They don't do something for you and then immediately expect you to return the favor in some way. And of course, we should be in reciprocal relationships, but it's a sign of insecurity and immaturity when someone only does things to get something from you. That's not love or kindness. With the right person, you will not feel like you have to walk on eggshells or else they're going to explode. You won't feel like you need to anticipate their mood or make sure that you find the right words so that they don't get triggered. Far too often we fall into the healer role, right? We become the saver, the fixer, because believe it or not, that's what we're used to. It's
If
easier
you really
for you to
love
put your
somebody,
needs on the back
you can
burner,
heal them
you've
a
been
little
doing it
bit.
your whole life.
Why not?
It's easier for you to think, how can I say the right words not to trigger them, rather than it's not my job to manage their triggers. It's easier to empathize and try to heal them with your love because that's what you actually feel like you can control, right? But the hard truth is they don't want to be saved, and you can't heal them with your love.
Yep.
The only
Everything
thing
he
you'll end up
says,
doing is
if it
banging your
applies
head
to an
against the wall and
extreme,
realizing
sure.
you're the only one bleeding here. It most likely comes natural to you, bending over backwards, overextending, always being the one to apologize first somehow, always being the one that's prioritizing the relationship and connection with someone over your needs, sacrificing your boundaries or desires for the sake of staying connected. But the problem is that only has one destination, and it's disconnection and resentment. The very thing you were trying to prevent is exactly where that path leads, because self-abandonment doesn't lead to peace. It leads to bitterness. And I know all this stuff can be confusing, right? No relationship is going to be perfect, but we're not talking about perfect. We're talking about safe. We're talking about connected. We're talking about mutually respectful. I don't need perfect from you. I just need two people who are willing to serve each other in love. I need two people who can listen when their partner brings up a feeling or a need or a hurt. I need two people who can actually take accountability when they mess up. I need two people who care about how their words and actions affect their partner. You find me two people who are willing to put in that work, you can make just about any relationship work. But far too often, we treat those characteristics as a pipe dream, right?
Basics,
those things are impossible to find. But I'm just warning you, those aren't going above and beyond. That's the bare minimum if we want our relationship to not be miserable.
Basics.
If you're dating someone who has no capacity to actually listen and hold space when you're sharing a feeling, if your vulnerability is met with invalidation and rejection instead of curiosity and understanding, I never said that. You're really going to make a big deal about that? You're so dramatic. Not to mention, you do the same thing to me, and I don't complain. I guess I can't do anything right in your eyes, right? The truth is you can't feel connected to someone you don't feel safe sharing your feelings and needs to. You won't feel intimate with someone who you don't think respects your boundaries. You won't trust someone who can't take any accountability when they mess up, and you won't feel close to someone who always has to be the victim. Like I said before, conflict is inevitable. The only thing that matters is how you handle it together. It's either going to build your trust and emotional safety with each other, or it's going to break it. We have to be inviting and encouraging our partner to be honest in a vulnerable and respectful way about their feelings, needs, and desires. We should want to keep short accounts in this relationship. That means if it's a big deal to you, it's a big deal to me. We want to know what's on their heart. The last thing we would want for someone we love is to feel alone in their pain, feeling like they're going to be punished if they bring it up. Now, am I saying someone should constantly complain? Of course not. That shouldn't be the majority of the conversations we're having together, but there also has to be some space allowed for our partner to be honest if there's something on their mind that bothers them. Conflict is simply an opportunity to understand each other better. It can lead to a deeper connection and intimacy with each other, but only if we do it correctly, vulnerably expressing feelings and needs, and the other person actively listening to seek to understand, validate, and empathize with their partner's experience before offering theirs. That's the formula. I can promise you that if you guys can't figure out conflict, or if you're willing but they're not, that relationship's not going to work. I mean, you can stay together, absolutely, but you won't experience closeness because your body will eventually distance itself from unsafe people. And when someone refuses to learn how to listen when you're hurt, they are not safe. Once again, does the presence of red flags mean that this relationship is doomed? No. But it does mean we have to slow down. We have to reflect. We have to take a step back and evaluate, is this person actually interested in intentionally working on this relationship in a healthy, mature way? Because if they aren't, then regardless of whether I love them or not, this isn't going to lead to a mutually fulfilling relationship that I know I deserve. All right, that's all I have. I really hope this was helpful. My goal is certainly not to make you feel hopeless or attacked. I just want the best relationship possible for you. I want you to avoid all the heartbreak out there. The only way to do that is paying attention to some of these red flags that we might have overlooked in the past because we didn't understand how dangerous they were. I know you got this. Trust your gut. Hold yourself accountable. Keep growing and learning and maturing. And remember, we're all in this together. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.
So stupid, everything, man. If that's 10 rules, you're never gonna get a 10 out of 10 nowadays anyways. So if you get like a 7 out of 10, you should just not immediately leave. You should just mention it and try and grow together. And he did not go into that. He did sort of point towards it, but he didn't really say it. What he then said and enforced multiple times was nothing in terms of come togetherness, but like step away and reevaluate and leave them, you know, it's like save yourself kind of stuff. Nothing in terms of working on it. So I don't like the message.